Okay. Nick, who should take this class?
I would say if you're a person who's struggled with self-criticism, perfectionism, and perhaps you feel overwhelmed or you've dealt with burnout, if you've been dealing with difficult emotions like anxiety or depression and loneliness and isolation, and these experiences have gotten in the way in some way in your life, and you suspect there's a better way. I would say self-criticism is one of the primary ways that we tend to default in our culture for how to motivate ourselves and guide ourselves toward doing the things that we want to do in our lives. However, it can be a bit like a maladaptive, overbearing parent, so to speak, and it can get in the way with allowing us to show up in our lives the way we really want to. And so I would say, self-criticism is really one part of it, but there's a whole cascade of other difficult emotional experiences that we can have that really weigh us down over time. And what this course is about is exploring an easier, more effective and more skillful way of relating with yourself. So if you think that there's some curiosity or some sense that there might be a different way, an easier way of relating to your experience, and you're looking for some tools to cultivate that, this is absolutely the course for you. And this is what has been really impactful in my life.
Yeah, and I've also noticed in the courses that I participated in and taught that the connection that this community can also provide in terms of, particularly if you're feeling lonely or not belonging. Part of what we try to create is a vessel in which everyone feels that they belong, that they're heard, that they're seen, that they're valued. And with that often comes a connection with your fellow human beings that are also participating in the course.
Yeah, that shared experience and how different it is than what can often be our experience, whereas like, hey, I'm the only one experiencing this right now, which further perpetuates the isolation and loneliness, which often can even be, it could be fairly subconscious or just not, something you're consciously thinking about, but it really takes a toll on you. And there's nothing like connecting with other people who, it turns out, even if the stories are different, actually have a lot of the shared difficulties, and to be able to cultivate skills around navigating that together can really be a powerful antidote to that. Lauren, let me ask you on this topic of about this course. Could you talk a little bit about what this course is not?
Yeah, a couple of things I think that are important to know is it's not therapy. So we, neither Nick or I, are psychologists, and the goal of this program, although there may be therapeutic effects from the work that we do, the goal here is to really help participants develop resources within themselves to deal with their emotions and difficulties that are happening within their own personal lives. The other thing that I would add is that it's not technically mindfulness training. We use mindfulness as the baseline for the training, but it's really compassion and self-compassion training that we do. And the big difference is with mindfulness, there's the awareness piece that's the focus. And in this work, we really focus on compassion And this adds a warmth to the practice and to our lives. So
one that we need so much in
yes.
this world, especially just how harsh things can be out there and how harsh it can be toward ourselves. I'm curious, could you also talk a little bit about what you have personally gotten out of taking this course?
Yeah, couple things I remember right away that really were impactful for me when I first took the course. I can remember one of the first tools of I think there's something like 48 different exercises and tools and meditations that we went through. But one of them was a very simple soles of the feet exercise. And I can remember immediately starting to integrate that into my daily life. So if I was in the middle of a conversation that I was finding challenging, I was able to come back to into my body and noting that something felt off and be able to really feel my feet on the floor, which then gave me space to then maybe not react. It gave me an opportunity to sort of say, oh, something's going on here. What is this? I might have not even known what it is, but I was able to at least come back to myself to recognize that I was feeling off. And then to ask myself the all important question behind mindful self-compassion is what do I need? And so this moment is happening where I'm in discomfort. The person has no idea what I'm doing. They're continuing to talk. It's continuing to feel difficult for me, but instead of just being left in the difficulty, I was able to resource myself and I was able to feel my feet. I was able to say, oh, I need a few breaths. I took a few breaths, which again, the other person didn't even notice I was doing. And the next thing I realized, because I had some space, I realized that maybe this conversation needed to stop because I wasn't in a place to be able to continue it. And I was in a space of, rather than reacting, to be able to say, I'm needing a break right now. And I was able to pause and care for myself and give myself some space to be able to figure out what's the next steps in continuing this conversation. It couldn't happen right now, but it gave me time to think about things. So that's a simple example of one of the many tools that I personally got from this work.
Wow. So a new skill around in a resource, as you refer to it, and showing up in a difficult situation that typically that is challenging for you, that perhaps in the past maybe would have left you feeling overwhelmed and not sure how to respond, and maybe coming from a place of pure reactivity, as opposed to finding an inner resource. And you mentioned mindfulness of your body to be able to find more spaciousness to show up from a place of you mentioned asking, what do I need, or what's needed right now.
That's right.
And that's it makes me think of that. I think it's a Viktor Frankl quote. It's like, between the stimulus and the response is a choice, and that represents freedom. There's something, I'm paraphrasing, right? So really, really powerful.
Can I ask you a question, just in terms of what's your sense of reservations, or why people may be hesitant to sign up for a course like this?
Sure. I think there are a couple of things. I mean, first of all, as a guy and thinking about how we're socialized in this world, I think even for myself, when I first heard self-compassion, I just kind of had I kind of took a step back a little bit, like, I don't know, that's not for me. And I remember the first time I was introduced to it, I was like, yeah, I'll have time for self-compassion once I have everything figured out. Then the compassion can come. But right now I need to, get things going together, right? I need to stay hard on myself until push myself into whatever it is that mold myself the way I need to be. And so it's such a misconception. So I do think for some people hearing that, they think that it somehow means that they're going to become soft on themselves and they're going to lose all their sense of motivation, and they're going to lose. There's a lot of fear of loss, right? Whereas it's a complete misconception, because really what this is around getting underneath and understanding what our real motivation actually is underneath, and what's causing these, as I mentioned before, sort of maladaptive ways of showing up. And these practices are really old. I mean, this is not, yes, the curation of this course and the clinical psychology research that's happened around it, and all the evidence that shows how beneficial it is in people's lives. Yes, that is new. And that is, I would say, state of the art, if you want to call it that. And that's why this is becoming such a buzzword now, right? But the practices are really old. Human emotions and people relating to each other and having challenges are thousands of years old. So yeah, I would say the reservations are thinking that self-compassion is going to be, this is one of the reservations, that it's going to somehow, I'm going to let things go, and I'm going to become, I'm not going to have motivation in my life. But I would imagine you hear some other reservations from people as well.
I've heard a number of people ask questions around the requirements in class in terms of participation. I've heard people say, oh, I'm nervous to talk. Do I have to say stuff? I've heard people ask questions around, do I have to share my own personal stories? And my response has been, there are no requirements at all to have to participate. This is really about, again, setting up our goal as facilitators is to set up an environment where people feel as safe as possible, where they feel like they can be heard if they are in a place where they're wanting to share that. And yet, if you find that you ask yourself the question, what am I needing in this moment? And the answer is, I need to just be listening. Or maybe it's just not today that I'm going to be able to, that I'm going to share, that you listen to that, and we respect and meet you exactly where you are in the moment. I was going to say one other thing about, I'm blanking on the last point that I was just saying.
Yeah, I think you were maybe cultivating, showing up and maybe having reservations in the moment about whether or not you are put in a position to speak, or perhaps when you're invited to speak, and whether or not that's something you feel like you have the resources for. Is that where you were going?
Yes, that, and that the way that the course is designed is that you're not coming here, again, as we said, for therapy. So we're not here to share our own personal stories and what's happening. The idea is to sort of get out of the stories and out of our head around this, and to really look at the exercises and tools that we can use to be more mindful and make connection, and look at the critic, self-critic, and with that, really looking at what our experience is with the exercise versus the story that got us to that place, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that it does make sense to me, because I've been through the course, right? Especially and I can, that we talk a lot about getting out of the story, and just, especially when we're sharing, to the extent you decide to share anything, even if you opt in to share anything with the group, right? It's not about, hey, this happened with my sister and my family. It's like, oh, I'm doing this practice and I'm noticing that a lot of some emotion is coming up for me, but then I was able to relate to it a little bit, try relating to it in a different way. And it was hard. And I don't know if I can do this. This is really hard, or something like that. And then other people can talk about their challenges with it as well, or what they discovered along the way. Which I think, to your point about people are saying, hey, I don't want to dive in and start sharing everything about my life, or I don't want to, it's like, once you start to see the way that people can relate to this common experience, and especially without the stories, you start to find a new way of you realize that connecting with people on this dimension is actually much less complicated and simple and really nourishing. And so I've noticed that, you know, even for myself, like coming into this course initially, being like, what am I going to have to, am I going to have to get into everything with people? Like there's a lot of reservation around it. And for others as well. And then to watch people move to a place of, oh, actually, yeah, I can share, I can chat with people. And then there's nothing like coming from the when we have the opportunities for people to connect and share, and they all come back into the main room if we do it in that format, and everyone oftentimes will have a giant smile on their face because they're just so so happy that there are other people who they can relate to in this way that they had no idea that they could. So it really it can really fill people up in a surprising way, even I think the most self-described introverted people. And again, to emphasize your point, it's not a requirement that you're sharing things. So I hope we address that. And I would encourage anyone watching this to, if that's one of your main concerns, which is valid, to reach out to us and ask more about it, to see if this is something that you're ready for, or that would, you know, get a better sense of what it would actually be like, so you can decide. Lauren, do you want to talk a little bit about the actual format and what people could expect in this class, how it actually works?
Sure. Yeah, so it's a weekly meeting on Zoom, and we often start with a soft landing just to ground ourselves, and then the first 2 weeks are a little heavier on the didactic side, only because we need to sort of set the framework and the foundation from which we're going to work. And then from there, it's really an experiential course. We're here to give you a bunch of tools to try out, try them on, see what works for you, what doesn't work, what you might need to modify. And then week to week, there's themes that we cover. So we look at a variety of things, between setting the foundation for what is mindfulness, compassion, self-compassion, looking at our core values, looking at suffering and difficult emotions, and then exploring challenging relationships down the way. I think the great thing about the way this program is designed is it shows us that we can all learn self-compassion. It's a learnable skill. And so the idea is at the end of this course that you'll walk away with a set of tools that you'll be able to use in daily life, and be able to find more self-compassion for yourself in life.
Yeah. And I think you know, like a new, like a sense of possibility around, like a little more spaciousness than you previously could have imagined, perhaps. At least, you know, I could, speaking for myself as well, around like, oh, there's room here to shift that I didn't know that was there. That means that if I continue practicing, good things can continue to come, more ease can continue to come. And so, you know, and so I think I would want to encourage anyone who is in a place where they think, oh, well, you know, this is just how I am, you know, it's just, I'm, you know, to really consider giving something like this a chance. You know, I can say I sort of, I know, Lauren, you and I found our way into this, into the teacher training together in slightly different routes, but quite a bit in common, perhaps, around sort of ingrained habits and how we show up in our lives that maybe make things a little extra challenging or tight, or, you know, constrained, and just that you know, to go through this experience and to relate to other people and start to cultivate some new ways of exploring your own inner experience and relating to yourself, can just open up doors that you had no idea existed, which is that in and of itself can create real change in your life that feels very welcome. So great. I think we covered quite a bit of good stuff here. I would suppose I would just wrap this up by, Lauren, anything else that you would want to add, but I would just wrap up and just encourage people to reach out to us to talk about it. This isn't one of those things. I mean, you could just sign up, but I think it's important to just talk to one of us and get a good sense of, hey, this is a little bit more detail on how it would work, and here's where I'm at. Would love to hear a little bit more about your own, like your own history around what got you interested in something like this, and then we'd love to welcome you into the course. Anything else you want to say about that, Lauren?
Yeah, I think just in closing, I just want to add one other piece is that there's no requirement of having had any experience in mindfulness, meditation, anything in this world at all. So if this is brand new and this is something you're like, can I even do this if I've never done mindfulness or meditation, or maybe some of the words that we've been using, you're not exactly sure what they mean. This course is for everyone. There's no requirement to having done this, and the course explains all of the terminology that we've used today. So I guess that's the last thing I would just add.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because I know a lot of people have been through this course and been like, wait a minute, I don't meditate. I can't meditate. And it's like, okay, well, you don't need to, right? And it's just that there's this mindfulness basis that we use as a foundation for being able to have some spaciousness to look at whatever our experience is. But it's a tool that anyone can cultivate, and you don't need to be a meditator to be able to do it.
Yeah, our goal isn't to make you a meditator. The goal of the course is to give you tools to be more self-compassionate.
Yeah, really well said. Great. All right. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that, and we would just encourage anyone to reach out and find out more.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.